My name is Alex, and I'm 32 now. But this whole mess started when I was 27. I grew up in a small, tight-knit town just outside Portland, one of those places where everybody knows everybody's business. It was a charming little town where you'd wave at the same people every day, and everyone seemed to have a connection to everyone else. I liked it, mostly. It was safe, familiar, and it felt like home, until everything fell apart. I was the only son in my family, raised in a relatively traditional household, but from a young age, I always felt like I was different. While other boys in the neighborhood liked sports and roughhousing, I was more drawn to reading, arts, and spending time with my female cousins and friends. I've always been more sensitive, maybe more empathetic than most of the guys I knew. Growing up, I often felt like I didn't fit the typical male mold. I wasn't into cars or sports as much as other boys, but that never bothered me too much. I spent a lot of time with my family, and my closest connection was with Katie, my childhood best friend. Katie and I were inseparable. Our families were next-door neighbors, and we had practically grown up together. Her parents became like second parents to me, and I could say the same for my family with Katie. We spent weekends together, vacations together, holidays, and every other moment in between. My mom and Katie's mom were best friends, so our bond only deepened as the years passed. Katie wasn't just a friend. She was like a sister to me, someone I could always talk to, someone I could rely on, and someone I'd known longer than anyone else in my life. As kids, Katie and I did everything together. I taught her how to drive when she turned 16, helped her with school projects, and listened to her vent about her crushes. She'd come to me for advice on boys, and I'd always do my best to guide her through the complicated world of teenage relationships. I'll admit at that time I had a bit of a soft spot for her too, but I always thought of her as more of a sister than a romantic interest. Over the years, though, things started to change. While I was still living at home, Katie and I began drifting into different social circles, especially as we got into high school and beyond. She started dating Mike, a guy who lived on the other side of town. They had known each other for years, but their relationship didn't become official until high school. I wasn't particularly close with Mike, but I liked him well enough. He was friendly, and he genuinely cared for Katie. So naturally, I was happy for her when they got serious. But when things started to get more serious between Mike and Katie, something strange began to happen. Jessica, Mike's ex-girlfriend, suddenly reappeared in their lives, and that's when everything started to go wrong. Jessica had always been a little possessive, especially when it came to Mike. She never really let go of their relationship, and when she found out that Mike was getting more serious with Katie, she wasn't thrilled about it. The first hint I had of something being wrong was when Jessica started planting subtle seeds of doubt in Katie's mind about my relationship with her. It started innocently enough. Jessica would make little comments, suggesting that Katie and I were too close, that maybe it wasn't normal for a guy and girl to be so close without something more happening. I brushed it off at first, but over time, things began to spiral out of control. Jessica, being the jealous type, began making more explicit claims. She spread rumors about Katie and me, saying that we had some sort of secret affair going on, something no one had ever seen but everyone supposedly knew about. It was beyond ridiculous. I couldn't understand why anyone would believe her, but somehow, people did. And it didn't help that Jessica was convincing. She knew how to manipulate a situation, twist the truth, and make things seem plausible, even when they weren't. She started telling people that Katie and I were secretly in love, that we'd been seeing each other behind Mike's back. Jessica claimed that we had been sneaking around for months. The more she spread the rumors, the more people in town started to believe them. The stories grew bigger and bigger, as rumors often do, until suddenly everyone in the town seemed to think that Katie and I were in some kind of forbidden relationship. Katie didn't know what to believe. She knew me, and she knew how close we were. But she also didn't want to believe that someone like Jessica could be lying. So, instead of confronting me, she started pulling away. The more the rumors spread, the more distant she became. I could feel the shift, the growing tension between us. It wasn't like it used to be. Katie was cold with me. She wouldn't return my calls, and when we did talk, it was always awkward. There was always this cloud hanging over us. I tried reaching out to her to explain, to clear the air, but she wouldn't listen. It hurt. It felt like everything we'd built together over the years was crumbling, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. I kept trying to explain to my family that the rumors were false, but no one would listen. Everyone had already made up their minds about me. At first, I didn't want to confront the rumors. I thought if I ignored it long enough, people would stop talking about it. But it didn't work that way. People kept talking, and the rumors kept growing. It wasn't just the people in the town who were getting involved. It was my own family. My parents, my siblings, even my cousins started treating me like I was guilty of something I didn't do. The more the rumors spread, the more I found myself isolated from everyone. Then, one day, everything came crashing down. I got the phone call that I never thought I would get. It was from Mike, asking me to meet him. I agreed, not knowing what to expect, but nothing could have prepared me for what would happen next. The day of Mike and Katie's wedding was supposed to be a day filled with joy, excitement, and celebration. The kind of day where everything is supposed to come together perfectly. But for me, it quickly became a nightmare that I still have a hard time believing really happened. I woke up that morning full of nerves and excitement, not because of any personal joy, but because of the weight of the whole situation. I was, after all, one of Mike's groomsmen, and I wanted to make sure everything went smoothly for him and Katie. I had spent countless hours helping out with the wedding preparations, setting things up, and making sure everything was in place for the big day. I wasn't the one getting married, but I was happy for them. Mike and Katie had been through a lot together, and they deserved a perfect day. I showed up early, suited up in a navy blue suit that cost way more than I would ever admit, and spent most of the morning trying to make sure everything was running as planned. I was helping guests find their way, and I even guided an elderly couple to the bathroom when they kept getting lost. The wedding ceremony itself was beautiful. Mike and Katie looked so happy together, and you could see the love in their eyes. But then came the moment that would change everything. I was walking the elderly couple back to their seats when I heard a commotion behind me. I turned around, trying to figure out what was going on, when it hit me. A blow to the face was so powerful it knocked me backward, and I saw stars. I couldn't process what had happened at first. My head was spinning, and I barely had time to react before the next punch came. Mike, my cousin, the guy I had grown up with, the guy I'd considered my brother, came charging at me, fists flying. He was screaming at me, but all I could hear was the ringing in my ears. His face was twisted in anger, his eyes wide with betrayal. "How could you?" he shouted. "I trusted you. You were supposed to be family." I was caught completely off guard. I had no idea what was happening. My heart pounded in my chest as I tried to protect my face, stumbling backward, trying to shield myself from the relentless assault. Mike wasn't just mad. He was enraged. This wasn't just a fight. This was pure fury. I'm not a small guy. I'm 6'1", and I work out regularly. I figured I could at least defend myself, but Mike was stronger than I expected. He worked construction, and his strength was unlike anything I'd ever encountered. He kept throwing punches, and every blow sent sharp waves of pain through my body. I couldn't think. I couldn't understand why he was doing this. All I knew was that the person I thought I knew so well was now beating me senseless in front of our family and friends. It wasn't until Tom, Mike's best man, and a few of the other groomsmen managed to pull Mike away that the assault finally stopped. I was left on the ground, bleeding from my mouth and nose, trying to make sense of the situation. My suit was ruined. Blood was dripping down my shirt, and my left eye was swollen shut. I could barely see, and my nose felt like it had been broken. I couldn't understand it. I didn't know why this was happening. The elderly couple I had been helping stood frozen in shock. They didn't know what was going on, and to this day I still feel bad for ruining their day. I was too shaken up to apologize properly. I could barely speak. Someone from the wedding venue called for medical help, and I was taken to urgent care. They kept asking if I wanted to press charges, but the idea of getting Mike arrested felt impossible. I didn't want to do that. I had no idea why Mike had attacked me, but part of me still didn't want to believe it was because of the rumors. He was family. I didn't want to turn my back on him. It was at that moment, while I was sitting in the urgent care room with an ice pack on my swollen face, that I received the text that would change everything. My phone buzzed. It was from my dad. I knew something was off by the tone of the message. "Wedding canceled. Clear your stuff out of the garage by tonight." I stared at the screen, my heart sinking. This wasn't just about the fight anymore. Something had happened, and it was bad. I immediately tried to call my dad, but it went straight to voicemail. Same with my mom and my sister. They wouldn't pick up. The only person who did answer was my brother Mark, and all he said was, "How could you do this to the family?" Before hanging up on me. I sat there in the urgent care room, still in disbelief. I could barely focus on the nurse's concerned face as she asked me more questions. She must have thought I was in some kind of bar fight, considering the state I was in. But no one cared to ask what happened. No one wanted to listen to my side. The entire town had already decided I was guilty. The most painful part of all was that I had no idea what was really going on. Katie wouldn't talk to me. My family wouldn't talk to me. Everyone had turned against me based on lies and rumors without giving me a chance to explain myself. I left urgent care, still dazed, and tried driving home. I couldn't see well with my swollen shut, but I forced myself to keep going. When I arrived at my parents' house, I could already feel the tension in the air. My sister's car was in the driveway, and I saw Mark's truck too. It was like the whole family was waiting for me. When I walked into the kitchen, the silence hit me. My mom gasped when she saw me, and then immediately asked, "What did Mike do to your face?" Before I could respond, she followed up with, "But how could you do this to the family, Alex? How could you do this to Mike?" The shock of hearing those words made my head spin. I couldn't believe what was happening. They all thought I had done something wrong. My mom and dad, the people who had raised me, the people who were supposed to be on my side, they had already decided I was guilty. And that's when they told me what was going on. Apparently, they thought I had been having an affair with Katie. Yes, Katie. The girl I grew up with, the girl I treated like a sister. I laughed in disbelief. Actually laughed, which I'll admit was probably a mistake. Don't laugh with a split lip. It hurts. But it was just so ridiculous. How could anyone believe that? How could my family, the people who knew me better than anyone, just throw me away like this? My brother Mark, who had been my best man at my wedding, grabbed a duffel bag from behind the couch and tossed it at me. "Get your stuff and get out," he said, like I was some kind of criminal. The bag contained maybe half of my things from the garage, a few old baseball cards, some random clothes, and the rest of my childhood memories were left behind. I tried to explain, to tell them this was insane, but they wouldn't listen. They didn't care. I was guilty in their eyes, and that was all that mattered. The days that followed the wedding were a blur. The physical pain from the fight with Mike was nothing compared to the emotional devastation of what had just happened. I had no idea how quickly everything could spiral out of control. One moment I was celebrating the marriage of my cousin, someone I had grown up with and considered family. Next, I was a pariah, abandoned by everyone, including my own family. I spent hours trying to reach out to anyone who would listen. I called Katie, trying to explain the situation, trying to get her to understand that I wasn't the person they all believed me to be. But she wouldn't answer. I left message after message, hoping for just one chance to speak to her, to have her listen. I even tried contacting my mom and dad again, but their phones went straight to voicemail. The only response I received was from my brother, Mark, who sent a cold, terse text. "Don't bother. You're not part of the family anymore." The weight of those words hit me like a punch to the stomach. My own brother, the person I had always been close to, had just cut me out of his life without any explanation. It wasn't just Mike and Katie. It was everyone. My family, my friends, even the people I had known all my life, they all turned their backs on me, and all because of a lie. I knew how small towns worked. People talk, and in such a tight-knit community, there's nowhere to hide from the whispers. Once the rumors start, it's almost impossible to stop them. I was the subject of gossip, of speculation, and worst of all, of judgment. I'd never experienced anything like it in my life. The isolation was suffocating. Every time I stepped out of the house, I could feel the stares of people who used to smile and wave at me. Now, they crossed the street to avoid me. I tried to go to the local coffee shop, a place I had frequented for years, but when I walked in, the barista, who had known me since I was a kid, didn't even acknowledge my presence. I was treated like a ghost. The worst part was when I saw Mrs. D, the elderly woman from down the street, standing in line. She baked cookies for me every time I mowed her lawn in high school. She had always treated me like a grandson, but when she saw me, she looked away and pretended not to see me. The impact of the rumors was spreading far beyond my family. My once close friends started distancing themselves, as if somehow being associated with me would tarnish their reputations. It wasn't just the people in town who believed the lies, it was the way they treated me that hurt the most. My work life also became unbearable. I had always prided myself on being dedicated and hardworking, but suddenly I was the subject of ridicule. People whispered behind my back, and I caught the occasional sympathetic glance from a colleague. But nothing was ever said directly. I didn't know who was judging me more, the people who didn't know me, or those who had known me my entire life. I began to dread going to work, knowing that the rumors would follow me. One morning I walked into the office to find Susan from accounting staring at me. She was one of the few people who had ever been nice to me, but now she just stared at me with a mixture of pity and judgment. By lunchtime, everyone at the office knew about the allegations, and soon I was called into HR. The HR rep, who was barely 23, looked at me like I was some kind of soap opera villain. She asked me in a slow, patronizing tone if everything was okay at home, as if I was a walking scandal. I tried to explain the situation as best I could, but her face told me she didn't believe a word I said. I felt like I was living in a nightmare, like my entire world had been upended for no reason at all. I was surrounded by people who had never questioned the lies, who had never even bothered to ask for my side of the story. They had already decided who I was based on nothing but gossip. That night, I couldn't sleep. I tossed and turned in my apartment, the silence feeling like a weight pressing down on me. I had no idea what to do. I didn't know how to fix things, how to make everything right. The only thing I knew was that my life had changed in a way I couldn't reverse. The next day, I drove to the bar I used to go to for trivia nights, trying to find some sense of normalcy. I had been going there for years, and the bartender Dave was someone I had talked to about everything, from work troubles to personal issues. But when I walked in, Dave just gave me a look and said, "You know, man, I think it's time for you to find somewhere else to hang out." It was another punch to the gut. I wasn't welcome anywhere anymore. Everywhere I went, I was reminded of the betrayal, the lies, and the fact that everyone I cared about had abandoned me. I left the bar and drove aimlessly around town feeling like an outcast. The life I had known, the people I had trusted, they were all gone. And the worst part was that no one seemed to care. It didn't matter how many times I explained myself, how many people I reached out to. The rumors had already taken root, and it felt like nothing I did could ever change that. I knew I had to get out of this town. I couldn't stay here anymore, not with everything that had happened. The thought of walking down the street and seeing the same people who had turned their backs on me made me sick. But I didn't know where to go, where to start over. I didn't have anyone left here. That night, I made the decision. I packed up what little I had left, a few boxes of clothes, my personal belongings, and my childhood memories, and I left. I didn't look back. I couldn't stay in a place that was so full of judgment, so full of people who refused to listen, who refused to believe in me. I wasn't sure what I was going to do next, but I knew I needed to find a new beginning. I needed to start over somewhere where no one knew my name, no one knew my past, and most importantly, no one knew the lies that had been spread about me. I left my hometown behind and headed for the city. It was time for me to figure out who I was again. Leaving my small town behind felt like cutting a cord that had bound me to everything I had known. The weight of the rumors, the betrayal of my family, the people who had once been my friends, it all followed me like a shadow. But I knew that I couldn't stay there, not in a place where everyone had made their minds up about me without giving me a chance to explain. I needed a fresh start, away from the whispers, the looks, and the suffocating isolation. I drove for hours, not knowing exactly where I was going, but knowing I couldn't stay in the town that had destroyed me. I ended up in a city about 2 hours away, a place I had only visited a few times. It wasn't too far from my hometown, but it was different enough that no one would know my name or my story. I wasn't sure how I would build a new life, but the first step was simple. I had to get away from the past. I found a tiny studio apartment in the city. It wasn't much, but it was mine. The first night there, I sat in silence, taking in my surroundings. The apartment was small and sparsely furnished, just a few pieces of furniture, a bed, and a kitchen table. But for the first time in months, I felt a glimmer of peace. No one was judging me. No one knew what had happened. I could be whoever I wanted to be here. And for the first time in a long time, I could breathe. It was a strange feeling, freedom, but also fear. Starting over wasn't easy, and it wasn't comfortable. I had to find a job, make new friends, and get used to being in a place where no one knew me. The first few days were difficult. I had moments of doubt, moments where I questioned whether I had made the right decision. But every time I thought about going back to my old town, I remembered the looks, the rejection, and the pain of losing everything. There was no way I could go back. I found work fairly quickly, thankfully. I started at a small marketing firm in the city doing administrative work. It wasn't glamorous, but it was a job, and it gave me something to focus on. The work wasn't difficult, but the hardest part was dealing with loneliness. I missed my family, even though they had thrown me away. I missed the life I had before all of this, before the rumors and the betrayal. But I knew I couldn't go back to that life. I had to build something new from the ground up. The hardest part wasn't just being alone. It was trying to move forward when the past was constantly creeping into my thoughts. I tried to ignore it, tried to focus on my work, but every so often something would trigger a memory, a song, a photo, something that reminded me of how things used to be. The pain was always there, lurking beneath the surface. I thought about Katie, about how much I missed her and how things had fallen apart between us. I thought about Mike, about the wedding, and how he had beaten me up without even knowing the truth. But over time, I started to feel like I was healing, like the constant ache in my chest was starting to fade. I spent time focusing on things that made me happy. My work, walking around the city and getting to know new people. It wasn't easy and it wasn't fast, but it was a start. I made a conscious decision to stop dwelling on the past and to look forward. I couldn't change what had happened, but I could control what happened from here on out. One evening, after a long day at work, I decided to try something new. I had heard about a local trivia night at a bar called the Crocodile, and I thought it might be fun to go. I wasn't the most social person, especially in a new city, but I wanted to get out of my head, away from the isolation, and meet some new people. The bar was small and cozy. and the atmosphere was completely different from the places I used to go back home. It felt like a safe place, and for the first time in a while, I felt a sense of normalcy. I walked up to the bar, and the bartender, Jake, gave me a welcoming smile as he poured me a drink. I was sitting at the bar, waiting for the trivia night to start, when I met Amy. She was Jake's friend from yoga class, and she had come to join the trivia night with a group of people. At first, I wasn't sure how to start a conversation, but I somehow found myself talking to her about something completely random. Jake's dog, and how the dog had an impressive knack for catching frisbees. It was one of those awkward moments where I was just trying to make small talk, but somehow it worked. Amy was easy to talk to, and she didn't do that thing where people in new cities are polite but distant. She actually seemed interested in what I had to say. We sat there for hours, talking about everything, from her favorite podcasts to my thoughts on city living. We laughed, and for the first time in months, I felt like I was connecting with someone. Amy and I started dating soon after. It wasn't rushed, but it felt right. We spent a lot of time together, talking, eating out, trying new restaurants, and just enjoying each other's company. She was warm, understanding, and easy to be around. She never once questioned my past, and she never brought up anything that might trigger the pain I still felt. She just accepted me for who I was, and that was something I hadn't experienced in a long time. It was around this time that I started to realize that I was starting to heal. I was beginning to find joy in the little things again. The pain of the past didn't disappear completely, but it started to fade into the background as I built a new life for myself. I started to believe that maybe, just maybe, I could leave the past behind and focus on the present. I had moments of doubt, of course. There were days when I thought about what happened with Katie, what happened with Mike, and how my family had treated me. But those moments became fewer and fewer. I had a new life now, one where I wasn't defined by the lies and rumors. I had a job I was proud of, a girlfriend who cared about me, and a sense of peace that I had never known back in my small town. One evening, while Amy and I were walking through the city, I realized how far I had come. It wasn't the life I had planned, but it was my life. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was where I was supposed to be. 5 years passed before the truth came crashing back into my life. For a long time, I thought I had left everything behind. I was building something new, something real, a life where I wasn't defined by the lies others had spread about me. But as much as I tried to bury the past, it seemed the past wasn't done with me. It all started with a random message from Katie. It was unexpected, and honestly, I wasn't sure if I should respond. We hadn't spoken in years, not since everything went down. She had always been the one person I wished could have stood by me, but she hadn't. Still, I couldn't ignore her message, especially after everything that had happened. "Alex, I need to talk to you. Please. It's about the truth." I sat staring at my phone, the weight of her words sinking in. After all this time, was this finally the moment when everything would come out? When I would get the answers I had been waiting for, the closure I desperately needed? I took a deep breath and replied, "What's going on? What truth?" Katie didn't waste time. She called me the next day, her voice shaking. She apologized almost immediately, but I could barely take in her words. What she said next made my heart stop. "I found out the truth, Alex. Jessica, she lied. Everything she told Mike, everything that ruined our lives, was a lie. I didn't want to believe it at first, but I know now. She made it all up. She was jealous, and she wanted to break us apart. She did the same thing to Mike's ex before me. I should have believed you, and I'm so sorry I didn't." I couldn't breathe for a moment. Jessica, the woman who had been the catalyst for all the pain in my life, had made everything up. She had twisted the truth, played on Mike's insecurities, and destroyed everything in her wake, including my relationship with Katie and my family. I felt a mixture of relief and anger. The truth had finally come to light, but it was 5 years too late. I had been painted as the villain in my own story, and now everyone was going to find out. Katie continued, her voice full of regret. "Mike, he left me. I don't know what to do. I'm so sorry for everything, Alex. I'm just so sorry." The pain in her voice was palpable, but I didn't know how to respond. My mind was spinning. 5 years of silence, 5 years of wondering what had happened, and now the truth was here. But what good was the truth when it didn't matter anymore? Mike and Katie were no longer together, and the damage had already been done. After hanging up with Katie, I felt numb. I sat on my couch, staring out the window, not sure how to process the flood of emotions coursing through me. It wasn't just the hurt of being betrayed by my family and friends all those years ago. It was the anger that they had never even tried to hear my side. They had accepted Jessica's lies without question, without proof. And now, 5 years later, they expected me to just let it go. The next few days were filled with messages and calls from people I hadn't heard from in years. My parents, my brother, even some of the extended family. They all apologized, asking for forgiveness and admitting that they had been wrong. But it was too little, too late. My mom sent me a long text, apologizing profusely and telling me how much she missed me. My dad called and tried to explain how he had been misled, but I couldn't hear it. The trust was gone. They couldn't erase the 5 years of silence, of isolation, of watching me suffer without even bothering to ask for the truth. Even Mike reached out, trying to apologize for everything. He told me that Jessica had manipulated him, that he had never truly believed the rumors, but was too hurt and confused at the time. I didn't know how to respond to him. The apology was nice, but it was hollow. I wasn't the same person I had been back then. I had changed. I had healed. And I wasn't going to let the past come back to tear me apart again. The worst part of it all wasn't the lies or the betrayal. It was that I had spent 5 years thinking that I was the one who was wrong, that I had somehow caused all of it. For years, I lived with the guilt of losing my family, losing Katie, and losing everything I had known. And now, the truth came out. But it didn't change anything. The damage was done. My family had made their choice. They had believed the worst about me without question. And now they had to live with that. As the truth finally came to light, I thought I would feel some sense of justice or satisfaction. But the reality was more complicated. Yes, the lies Jessica told about me were exposed, and I was finally vindicated. But it didn't fix everything. The damage had already been done. My family, Mike, and even Katie had already moved on with their lives, while I was left to pick up the pieces of my own. But as time passed, something shifted inside me. I realized that forgiveness wasn't about them. It wasn't about making them feel better or repairing broken relationships that could never be the same. It was about freeing myself from the weight of anger, guilt, and resentment I had been carrying for so long. I didn't need to forgive them for them. I needed to forgive for me. Amy, my steady rock throughout all of this, helped me see that. With her calm presence, she made me realize that holding on to the past was only holding me back. And for the first time in years, I was ready to truly let go. I took small steps toward healing. I focused on my work, on building a new future, and on nurturing my relationship with Amy. We spent countless nights exploring the city, laughing together and growing closer. It wasn't perfect, but it was real, and it was mine. One evening, Amy turned to me with a soft smile and asked if I was ready to make things official. For the first time since everything fell apart, I knew I was. I had healed enough to love again, to trust again, and to believe that the future could be better than the past. The truth had set me free, not because it changed what had happened, but because it allowed me to stop living in the past. It gave me the peace I had so desperately sought for so long. I was ready to embrace the future, a future built on trust, love, and the lessons I had learned the hard way. Story 2. Family lied. They canceled Christmas dinner due to severe weather. Mom texted, "Everyone staying at home?" Then I saw their automobile as a teen. My sister's house. The ideal vacation. They posted when they called next day. Catherine. Because of the ice storm, everyone is remaining at home. There will be no Christmas dinner. Stay safe. My mom's text read. I stared at my phone in disappointment, but understood. After all, Nashville winters can be dangerous. I had no idea at the time how this straightforward text would expose years of family dishonesty and permanently alter my life. My name is Catherine, and I'm 32. I'm an accountant, and until this Christmas, I assumed I was just the unusual one in my family. The quiet, career-focused sister who didn't quite fit in with their loud social gatherings. My younger sister, Anna, was always the star, the one who could do no wrong in our parents' eyes. I took a seat for a peaceful day by myself that Christmas morning. I made myself hot chocolate, turned on some holiday movies, and tried to stay positive despite the loneliness. Around 3 p.m., I was scrolling through Instagram when my heart stopped. There it was, a fresh post from my cousin Nina. Perfect family Christmas at Anna's. So blessed to have everyone together. Family Customs Christmas dinner. The photo showed my entire family. Anna's elegant dining table was crowded with my grandmother, mom, dad, aunts, uncles, and cousins. They were all smiling, wearing festive sweaters, clearly enjoying the festivity they had purposefully excluded me from. I could see bright sunny skies through the windows in their pictures. An ice storm did not occur. There never had been. As I looked through more pictures, my hands began to shake. There was my dad slicing the turkey, my mom preparing her distinctive Christmas cookies, my small nieces and nephews opening presents. The ice storm excuse was a pure invention, a handy falsehood to avoid informing me I wasn't welcome at their beautiful family event. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. All numerous times they informed me events were canceled, all those intimate gatherings I hadn't been invited to. How many of them had actually happened without me? For what length of time had they been plotting to keep me out while feigning concern? My phone rang the following morning. It was my mother acting as if nothing had occurred. "Hi, honey. I hope you enjoyed a peaceful Christmas. We missed you." My hands clenched into fists at the casual cruelty of her words. This was the moment things would change, though I didn't know it yet. Growing up in our family home, I always tried to be the good daughter. I assisted my mom with chores, preserved straight A's in school, and even gave up my desire of going art school to study accounting since my parents believed it was more practical. When my sister Anna left college to pursue a career as a yoga instructor, she was free to do as she pleased. My parents called her brave when I worked extra to help them pay off their mortgage. They barely acknowledged it. I can recall a specific instance that ought to have made me realize things sooner. 3 years ago, when my dad needed surgery, I took 3 weeks off work to help care for him. I took care of his medicine, cooked, cleaned, and transported him to appointments. Once Anna arrived, stayed for an hour to take social media selfies with him, and then left, saying she was at a yoga retreat. Yet somehow, in my parents' retelling of that time, Anna was the supportive daughter while I was just doing the bare minimum. My extended family wasn't any better. At every occasion, my aunts would admire Anna's free attitude while asking me when I was going to loosen up and learn to appreciate life. My professional achievements were written off as uninteresting, while Anna's most recent adventure, teaching yoga in Bali, was the topic of conversation at every family meal. I kept telling myself that family loved me in their own way and that it didn't matter. Even last month, I spent hours helping my mom prepare for Thanksgiving, only to hear her tell everyone that Anna had done all the work while I just sat around, As usual, I suppressed my hurt and said nothing. I volunteered to assist with the preparation and cooking when Anna revealed that she would be hosting Christmas this year. She dismissed me, stating that she wanted it to be flawless. I should have seen the signs then, but I was still trying so hard to believe in the fiction of our happy family. In reality, I've lived my whole life attempting to gain their acceptance, justifying their actions, and acting as though I didn't notice when they kept me out of unplanned family get-togethers that everyone else somehow knew about. I told myself that if I simply tried more, worked longer, sacrificed more, they would eventually view me as worthy of being part of their beautiful family image. Hello, sweetheart. I hope you enjoyed a peaceful Christmas. You were missed. My stomach turned at my mother's phony smile. I grabbed my phone harder, gazing at the Instagram photographs still open on my desktop, proof of their lovely family event that I'd been purposely excluded from. Really? Nina's social media posts indicate that everyone had a great time at Anna's place, so I was able to maintain my composure, everybody but me. The silence on the other end was deafening. I could almost picture my mother's face, that familiar expression when she's been caught in a lie but is already making explanations. "Oh, okay," she mumbled. "Anna organized it last minute. Additionally, you are aware of how uncomfortable you can be at events by being so quiet." We simply pondered. What did you think? Pretending that everyone else was spending Christmas alone, I stressed that it would be preferable to lie to me. Mom said, "Don't be so dramatic." We were attempting to avoid any unpleasantness. You know how Anna wanted everything to be perfect? That's when it hit me. All the prior canceled events, the times plans had inexplicably fallen through, the family images I'd see later on social media. This wasn't a one-time thing. This was a pattern. How often? With little more than a whisper, I asked. How many more get-togethers have you misled me about? So, another revealing quiet. You're being too sensitive, Catherine. This is exactly why. What is the reason? I interrupted her. Why do you not include me? Why you pretend I don't exist unless you need something? Why? While I'm treated like a bother, Anna gets to be the ideal daughter. It's unfair. My mom objected. Both of you are equally loved by us. Simply put, Anna works hard to fit in with the family. You're constantly very busy at work. I gave a sour laugh. Are you occupied at work? You mean that you're too busy to help pay your mortgage? Busy caring for Dad following surgery? That busy? Pay attention. The tone of my mother's speech became severe. Perhaps we should give each other some space if you're going to act in this manner. When you're prepared to be reasonable, give me a call. The cue died. As I sat there looking at my phone, 32 years' worth of memories came suddenly and painfully into sharp focus. Every justification, every rejection, every miscommunication. Everything had been planned. The issue was not with me. I had never been. I stopped trying to justify them at that point. The instant I realized the reality. There was no family for me. Although they regarded me like an afterthought, I had folks who shared my DNA. Something broke inside me after that phone call. I was tired of being the doormat for the family. I opened my laptop and started drafting an email to my entire family. Sister, parents, uncles and aunts, cousins, everyone who had been there that Christmas meal. Years of suppressed emotions burst forth as my fingers slid across the keyboard. I've seen the pictures I wrote about from Christmas dinner. I was informed that a fake ice storm was the reason for the cancellation of the meal. I want everyone to be fully aware of what they have done. I wasn't simply left out of a family get-together. To have me spend Christmas alone, you planned a complex falsehood. Screenshots of my mom staying at home are attached. Everyone's doing the same. Text messages in addition to social media, pictures from their party. Before I could second-guess myself, I hit send. Responses began pouring in almost instantly. According to my Aunt Marie, they neglected to inform me that the plans had changed. I was overreacting, Uncle Robert said. After my cousin Nina's tweets revealed their deception, she promptly removed all of the Christmas pictures and messaged me to claim I was creating needless trouble. Then Anna responded with a lengthy patronizing email about how she only wanted one ideal holiday and how I never try at family gatherings. Given that I clearly dislike family get-togethers, she even dared to imply that my exclusion was for my own benefit. But it was my parents' reply that actually showed me who they were. They went on the attack rather than offering an apology. My mother began phoning acquaintances from our shared family, making up a tale about my having a breakdown. I received a severe email from my father on the importance of protecting family privacy and the unacceptableness of sharing our private problems. Now you've actually done it. I got an SMS from Anna, Mom's sobbing, everyone's angry, and it's all because you couldn't simply accept that. Perhaps you are the issue. This is exactly why we didn't want you at Christmas. I had the impression that I was in a different reality. They had purposely excluded and lied to me. Yet nevertheless, I was the culprit for exposing their actions. The more I stood up for myself, the more they skewed the story. They escalated when I refused to apologize and back down. My mother started showing up to my employment unannounced, causing incidents in the foyer. Anna started sharing ambiguous posts on social media about choosing peace above family and harmful individuals. Rather than bullying me, my father threatened to remove me from his will if I didn't cue. What I had finally realized was only validated by their acts. This was not an affectionate family shielding themselves from a challenging member, desperate to keep control over someone who had finally ceased following their rules. This poisonous system was in place. At that moment, I made the decision that I had to do more than simply reveal their falsehoods. It was time for me to fully escape their control. Little did they know, I was already crafting a strategy that would show them precisely what happens when you push away the one person who had always been there for them. Rachel, an old family friend who had retired from handling my parents' finances years prior, sent me an unexpected message a week after I sent my confrontational email. "I've been following your family's activities on social media, Catherine. Something is important for you to know. Is it possible for us to meet?" I agreed to meet her in a quiet cafe downtown. Rachel was holding a manila package and appeared anxious when I got there. She passed the envelope over the table and added, "I've been carrying the guilt of this for years. I can't keep silent any longer after witnessing how they're treating you today, even if your father sworn me to secrecy." The package included 15 years' worth of court records and bank statements. As I read through them, my hands began to shake. These documents show that my grandpa left me a sizable legacy of around $300,000 that I was unaware of, all of which was intended for my future schooling. The trustee was your father. Rachel gave a calm explanation. When you became 25, he was supposed to provide you access. Rather, he moved everything to Anna's accounts and used it to finance her unsuccessful business endeavors and way of life. The realization struck me like a punch to the body. During the years I helped them with their mortgage, I worked extra hours to pay for my accounting degree, and I was still repaying my school loans. The entire time, they had been hoarding my inheritance and using it to buy Anna. "And there's more," Rachel added. "Additionally, your grandpa gave you and Anna possessions that were supposed to be divided evenly. All of them were sold by your parents. When you were 18, they had you sign your power of attorney. Do you recall that it was for making medical judgments in an emergency? I was ill. They had total control over my financial interests, thanks to the contract I obediently signed. As they saw me struggle, took my assistance with their costs, and made me feel bad for not doing more for the family, they had methodically stolen my fortune. Even worse, the accounts revealed that Anna was receiving frequent transfers of funds from my inheritance to support her yoga schools and Bali vacations, which were labeled as business investments. They had criticized my dull accounting work while praising her for all those excursions. Why tell me now? With a scarcely calm voice, I asked Rachel, Because your mother painted you as unstable and unappreciative in her social media posts. They're attempting to discredit you before you can learn the truth. Catherine, they have been stealing from you for years. Their actions are more than merely immoral. It's against the law. All of a sudden, it all made terrible sense. They're trying harder and harder to make me seem irrational. After they had already taken my fortune, they threatened to remove me from the will. They were trying to keep up the story that I was the challenging sibling and Anna was the successful one. With my mind racing, I gently repacked the paperwork inside the envelope. Thank you, Rachel. I know precisely what I need to do now. This was no longer simply about a Christmas gone wrong. This involved years of deliberate theft and deceit, and I was in a unique position to hold them accountable since I am an accountant with years of expertise investigating financial wrongdoing. Having taken Rachel's papers, I carefully constructed my argument throughout the course of the next week. I understood exactly how to follow the money trail since I was an accountant. Every unlawful transfer, every abused power of attorney, every false paper, I kept track of everything. I also had everything reviewed by Sarah Chen, an estate fraud lawyer. Sarah affirmed that this is an obvious instance of financial exploitation. We can file criminal charges if you desire to follow that option. I studied my alternatives carefully. The reputation of my family would be ruined by a criminal case, but our relationship was already ruined by them. I nevertheless made the decision to give them one final opportunity to put things right. I sent an email to Anna and my parents asking for a family meeting to work out our disagreements. They leaped at the chance, perhaps believing they could coax me back into line. We decided to get together the next Saturday at my flat. I placed 3 folders, one for each of them, on my dining table the morning of the meeting. Each folder had a letter from my lawyer explaining their alternatives, as well as a comprehensive record of their scam. Either transfer all remaining monies back to me and sign a confession, or face criminal prosecution. They showed up cocky, obviously expecting me to say I was sorry. My mom got right in. "We're so happy you've woken up, Catherine." I slid the folders across the table and interrupted her. Before any further words are spoken, I recommend reading them. The color faded from my father's cheeks as he perused the paperwork. Anna's hand began to shake. My mother struggled to retain control. "This is absurd. You are attempting to extort members of your own family?" "Blackmail?" I chuckled icily. "No, I'm offering you an option. Return my inheritance with interest and acknowledge what you did, or I'll let the cops handle it." Rachel has consented to testify previously. Rachel was not entitled. "My dad got things started. You were not entitled. I cut you off. You watched me suffer for years while stealing from me. You sold property that was legally mine by using my power of attorney. You used my fortune to pay for Anna's lifestyle." Anna started crying. "I had no idea. I was informed that the funds were from their savings. Don't lie." Calmly, I answered. "The transfers went directly to your accounts. You were fully aware of what you were doing. My mom tried something new. Consider the impact this will have on the family. What are people going to say? Before robbing your own daughter of hundreds of thousands of dollars, you ought to have considered that." I answered. "You have 48 hours to make up your mind. I'm going to the cops until you sign the confession and set up the transfers." Panicked, they departed. My father almost dragged my distraught mother and sister out the door. Family members all took sides, of course, and the family group chat was inundated with messages within hours. But I stayed calm. I had the facts and proof on my side. They now have the ball in their court. That night, I told Sarah on the phone. However, I have a feeling they won't make the best decision. I was prepared for everything that may happen. They had already given me the best present, after all, freedom from their control. The 48-hour deadline arrived and proceeded according to my plan. My family opted for pride above integrity. Neither did they set up any transfers or sign the confession. Rather, they attempted to erase evidence by destroying papers, canceling accounts, and even trying to coerce Rachel into taking back her statement. They were unaware that I had already turned everything in to the police. I formally filed charges the morning following the deadline. By the afternoon, police officers with search warrants began knocking on their homes. As the narrative developed, I observed from my office. My father was handcuffed and led out of his place of employment. Anna's yoga studio, which was bought with stolen money, was confiscated as an asset. When my mother was detained at a charity committee meeting, her meticulously maintained social media persona came crashing down. Once more, but in a different tone, the family group chat erupted. As soon as the proof was made public, relatives who had previously denied my assertions became silent. Note: the fall from grace of the prestigious family was covered by the local press. One day put a stop to all the years they had spent keeping up flawless looks. Rachel texted me and my phone buzzed. "You made the correct decision. Your granddad would be pleased." She was correct. This was no longer about retaliation. Justice was at issue. No delight, simply relief, as I saw the well-crafted lies of my family fall apart. I was at last free and the truth was out. After a year, I was sitting in my new Denver house and watching the snow fall outside my window. Months have passed since the court case ended. Both my mother and father accepted plea bargains and agreed to make amends. After her yoga business failed, Anna was able to secure a legitimate position as a receptionist. They had lost the ideal family image they had fought so hard to preserve. Remarkably, I didn't miss the family who had tolerated their behavior for years, even though the majority of them stopped talking to me. Rather, I had created a new network of support. Sincere companions who prioritized truthfulness above looks, colleagues who valued my work ethic, and even a few distant cousins who contacted out to repent for their prior actions. Last week, Rachel stopped by for coffee. She gave me an old photo album that she had discovered while organizing her workspace. There were photos of myself and my grandfather from times I had all but forgotten. He was teaching me how to fish in one picture, and we were both laughing about something that had long since been forgotten. "You were always the strong one," he said. Rachel informed me that although he was aware of their preference for Anna, he thought you would triumph. I softly touched the picture, recalling his warm grin. It had taken years, but in the end, his last gift had given me something more significant than cash. He had attempted to safeguard my future with that legacy. The bravery to defend myself and the autonomy to create my own life. Getting even isn't always the greatest form of retaliation. The goal is freedom, Story 3. My husband sent me a picture of himself and his 23-year-old girlfriend at our vacation house along with divorce papers via email. I quietly drank my morning coffee and said, "The house is mine now. Are you certain of that?" and disabled both his email and phone. Little did he know it was 7:15 a.m. I was in Nashville when I got the email that broke my heart. Unaware that her father had just blown our lives up with a single message, my 1-year-old daughter Emma was blissfully chattering in her high chair. The topic line was straightforward. "Let's go on." When I opened the attachment and saw the picture, I nearly spilt my coffee. My spouse of 5 years, Donald, encircled a young blonde woman who couldn't have been more than 23. Our lake cottage, a vacation property we purchased only a year ago, was in front of them. It was the same house where we had spent many weekends discussing our future plans. The email said, "I now own the house. I've already moved in with Amber. My lawyer will be sending over the divorce papers. Don't struggle with it. I am the owner of the deed." I felt my hands trembling as I placed down my coffee mug. Not out of terror, though. No, this was just my anger building. Donald genuinely believed that he could just give me divorce papers via email and take our vacation house, the house I had purchased with my business's earnings. He was unaware of what was about to happen. I observed our kid playing with her meal, still naive and joyful. I then took a quick look at the framed picture hanging on our kitchen wall. On our wedding day, Donald and I were beaming as if we had everything all out. 5 years of marriage. And he decided to finish it this way, with a picture of himself, with a lady almost half my age, and a smug email. I inhaled deeply before picking up my phone. Before I clicked block, my finger briefly lingered over Donald's contact details. I then opened my email and replied with 2 short sentences. "Are you certain of that? You should thoroughly review the documentation." I smiled, clicked send, blocked his email, and turned back to my kid. I was constantly undervalued by Donald. He viewed me as the understanding spouse who had helped him with his profession while also starting my own side company. He likely assumed that I would cry and even plead with him to change his mind, but he had overlooked one important aspect of me. Being careless about safeguarding my assets did not lead to the success of my business. In hindsight, I should have anticipated this. There were signs. I ignored minor warning signs because I was too preoccupied with managing our new baby and my expanding business. Over the previous 3 months, Donald had been visiting the lake house on a regular basis for work, saying he required quiet time to work on a major corporate merger. I supported his professional decisions while starting my own business from the ground up. I was already operating a profitable internet store when we first met 6 years ago, but Donald pretended it was simply a fun pastime. He enjoyed sharing with others how he had assisted me in making it a reality. The reality? Since we were married, the worth of my business has tripled, all via my own hard work and strategic planning. I had thought of the lake home, the ideal retreat for our family. It's remote enough to feel like a true getaway, yet close enough to Nashville for weekend getaways. Donald had insisted on having his name appear on the deed for tax considerations, even though I had paid for it in full with the earnings from my business. He said that, although I had consented, I had first had my lawyer prepare a number of extremely detailed paperwork pertaining to the real ownership of the property. Donald had been particularly aloof last week, using our home office phone for hours at a time. He became defensive when I questioned him about the merger, accusing me of not comprehending the intricacies of corporate economics. Rich, coming from a guy whose financial portfolio I'd secretly been managing for the previous 3 years, I took up Emma from her high chair and hugged her close, inhaling in her beautiful baby aroma. Her eyes were Donald's, but I was determined. It was already evident in the way she approached each new task. Now that I was looking at her, I was more determined. It was no longer just about me. It was also about safeguarding her future. With Emma on my hip, I made my way to my home office and turned on my laptop. I sent the paperwork indicating I had bought the lake house to my lawyer via email in a matter of minutes. Next, I viewed the stream from the security camera I had put on the property. Another safeguard Donald knew nothing about. Everything had been captured on camera. Each visit, each visitor, each betrayal. Amber may have been celebrating her win at the lake home, but she was unaware that she was the subject of a film that would play a significant role in my divorce case. It buzzed on my phone. Julia, my helper Rachel, texted me. "This is something you must see." A link to Amber's Instagram page was included, dozens of pictures of her with Donald dated back months. She even wore my clothing and used my belongings in several of the photos that were taken in our bedroom at the lake house. In the most recent post, she was seen showing off a huge diamond band that belonged to my grandmother. Donald had promised that we would give Emma the ring on her 18th birthday. I was ill. This was not a new incident. Before Emma was even born, this had been happening. 8 months ago, Amber proudly displayed a key to the lake house in one of the pictures, reading "Home Sweet Home" with my eyes and love heart as a caption. Moving in together is a new phase, when our infant kept me up all night. A woman who had just graduated from college had been playing house with Donald. His professional travels coincided exactly with the dates on the pictures. He had always stated that he needed to check on the lake cottage, which was why he was working late every weekend. All of it had been false. My hands are trembling. I launched the banking app. The second blow came at that moment. I put money into a joint account for Emma's college fund, but it was empty. Every cent, almost $100,000. Lost. Transferred out yesterday to an account I didn't recognize. The wrath I'd felt before turned into something cold and calculated. I phoned my bank immediately, then my lawyer. I had confirmation in an hour. For months, Donald had been methodically transferring funds in anticipation of this day. He had even attempted, but failed, to access my company accounts. At least those were safeguarded by separate financial systems and unbreakable contracts. I was talking to the attorneys on the phone when Rachel phoned. "Julia, there's more." A number of screenshots from Amber's private Facebook page were forwarded to me by her. The girl had been boasting to her pals about how she had found a wealthy older guy and how they intended to demand the full value of his uninteresting wife. Even jokes about how unaware I was and how preoccupied I was with my small internet store to see what was going on were included in the communications. They had no idea that my small internet store had tripled my fortune. In order to give Donald the impression that my company was only successful and not extremely profitable, I had kept that knowledge secret. He had never been able to examine my company's books well enough to fully comprehend what I had created because of his ego. I glanced at Emma, who was now soundly sleeping in her playpen. "Don't worry, darling daughter," I whispered. "Daddy is going to learn a valuable lesson from Mommy about the undervaluation of women in the corporate world." Over the following several hours, I was quite busy. Sarah, my lawyer, showed up to my house shortly before noon, and we sat in my home office going over paperwork. Emma and Rachel had a snooze upstairs while maintaining watch. I had increased the house's security. I had a feeling Donald wouldn't accept my email reply. He's not as smart as he believes, though. "Looking over the Lake Home paperwork," Sarah said, "we have unquestionable evidence that your company's finances were used to buy the home, even if the deed is in his name. The contracts, the transfer documents, and even the emails in which he acknowledges that it was your money. Everything is here." I pulled up my laptop's security camera feeds and nodded. "There's more. Take a look at this." Throughout the previous months, the video captured Donald and Amber coming inside the lake house at different occasions. However, Sarah was particularly intrigued by the video that was shot 2 days ago. It included Donald hauling box after box of household goods, including a few artworks I had bought with the money I made from my business. Sarah noted that it was an attempt to steal company property. For tax reasons, the art collection was bought via your business. The paperwork is with us. At that moment, a call from an unidentified number appeared on my phone. I switched it to speaker mode. "Don't you think you're really intelligent?" Donald's tone was abrasive and irate. "Julia, check your work email. My solicitors have also been quite busy." I felt sick to my stomach as I opened my email. In an emergency petition, Donald's solicitors claimed that my company was founded on his contacts and experience. During the divorce process, they were requesting temporary control of my company's finances as well as a thorough audit. You would make a sincere effort to keep me company. My heart was pounding, but I spoke steadily. "I founded the business before I ever met you. You constructed." He chuckled icily. "Who do you believe provided you with all of these business contacts? Who put you in touch with the appropriate people? Without me, Julia, you would be nothing." Amber is aware that she knows how to express gratitude. Sarah was already typing frantically on her laptop when I turned to her and silenced the phone. She gestured with her finger. "Hold on." Donald. The phone was unmuted by me. "Purchasing time. Give your actions a lot of thought. Yes, my solicitors will contact me regarding Emma as well. You can't be a good mother because you're too preoccupied with your valuable business. Amber gets along well with children. She was a nanny once. The idea of taking Emma chilled my blood, but Sarah brought her laptop to me before I could reply. A 3-year-old email that Donald had sent to a buddy bemoaning my success was displayed on the screen. She doesn't need my assistance because she will not even consider my business advice. She is correct. Her business is now worth more than my yearly wage. It's embarrassing. Into the phone, I grinned. I just emailed your lawyer something, Donald. Before threatening my business further, you might want to ask him. What are you discussing? Let's pretend you didn't realize how private your email archives were. Call off your solicitors or I'll send your boss an email next. What would he think of all those business relationships you say you've given me? There was silence on the cue. Next, click. Rachel rushed into the office with a pale face as Sarah was still going through Donald's emails. You must see this immediately, Julia. She pushed her iPad across from me. A draft press statement from Donald's business announcing his elevation to Chief Financial Officer, effective next month, was shown on the screen. All of a sudden, everything fell into place. The aggressive legal campaign, the deliberate actions with our finances, and the timing of his romance with Amber. It was more than simply abandoning me. Prior to his major promotion, he was cleaning house in an effort to protect his assets and reduce the amount of money he would lose in a divorce. There's more. Rachel flipped to a different page. Amber is not your typical girlfriend. She is the niece of the CEO. It seemed as though someone had hit me in the stomach. There was no younger lady that Donald had fallen in love with. In order to get promoted, he had planned a connection with the CEO's niece, the stolen money, the lake mansion, including the Emma-related threats. All of this was part of his plan to begin a new life with his ideal, well-connected young bride as a CFO. Sarah raised her head from her computer. I discovered something else, Julia. Donald has been involved in the corporate merger. One of your main rivals in business is involved. He will have access to information that might cause significant harm to your business if he is appointed CFO. I balled my hands into fists. Donald wasn't only attempting to harm me, he was setting up shop to demolish everything I had constructed. I thought about all those nights he'd spent in his home office claiming to be working on merger agreements. Instead, has he been looking through my business files? Verify the activities on my home network, I informed Rachel. Pay attention to any efforts to get access to my company's servers. Sarah discovered something more while Rachel was at work. Take a look at these 6-month-old emails that Donald and Amber exchanged. Even before Emma could walk, they were making plans for this. Amber wrote, "We can utilize the insider knowledge to force Julia's business out of the market once you're CFO. Uncle Robert promises to assist." The thought of them conspiring against me while I was taking care of our newborn baby made me feel nauseous. However, they had become careless due to their conceit. They had left a trail of evidence that may damage the CEO's reputation, in addition to Donald's advancement. My thoughts were interrupted by Rachel's words. I located it. Donald's laptop made many attempts to access your company's servers. Although he tried, he was unable to breach your security. Corporate espionage is what that is. I got up and went to the window to see Emma play with her favorite plush elephant in her playpen. Donald believed he was very smart for securing his future through his connection with Amber. However, he had overlooked the most crucial business lesson. Sarah, you should never undervalue your opponent. I consult my lawyer once again, write a letter to the board of directors of the firm, and include proof of Donald's attempted corporate espionage and the CEO's use of insider knowledge against a rival. Include the security tape showing Donald robbing the lake cottage of business property. How about Amber? Rachel inquired. I grinned glumly. The way their CEO employed a family member to assist in planning corporate espionage would likely pique the board's curiosity. Do you not? My phone rang with a lake house security system alarm, just as we were getting ready to send the email to the board. Donald had returned, and he was not by himself. Amber was not alone with him. Her uncle Robert, the CEO, was also present. They entered the house carrying boxes. More of my stuff, of course. Watching the live broadcast, I encouraged Sarah to wait. Let's first observe their actions. We could see them in the living room through the security cameras. The sound was really clear, another element that Donald was unaware of. Glasses in hand, they were enjoying champagne. For the aspiring CFO. To Donald and my lovely niece, who made it all possible, Robert lifted his glass. Julia doesn't know what's going to happen. Donald chuckled. The board will announce my promotion tomorrow morning, and by the afternoon, our legal team will have access to her company's financial records for auditing purposes. Her business will be useless in a month. What's the best part? Amber added her voice. Her biggest issue, in her opinion, is the lake house. Hold off until she learns of the offshore accounts. I went cold. Rachel. What? Offshore accounts. Rachel tapped her keyboard quickly. Her face darkened in a matter of minutes. Located them. For months, Donald has been transferring funds from your joint accounts to foreign assets. Not just the money for Emma's college. Somehow he was able to divert about $300,000. I didn't realize how big this was. Donald wasn't only preparing to abandon me. For months, he had been routinely robbing our family. The drama surrounding the lake home was only a diversion from his larger plan. Robert then uttered something that chilled me to the bone. Once Julia's firm tanks, our merger goes through effortlessly. Our subsidiaries will share her market share, and her problematic ethical business model will be a thing of the past. In addition to becoming profitable, my company's dedication to fair labor and ecological methods was upending their whole sector. This went beyond Donald's romance and his promotion. Because it endangered their economic model, they sought to demolish what I had constructed. I instructed Sarah to send the email, but first add one more item. Go to Emma's birthday backup server password and attach the Mark insurance file. When Sarah opened the file, her eyes sprang wide. It had years' worth of records regarding dubious activities at Donald's business, data that I had acquired while overseeing his financial account. I never imagined that I would need it. Therefore, I had saved it as insurance. Julia. Rachel looked at her screen and interrupted. Donald recently made another attempt to log into our company's servers from the lake residence. He's becoming desperate. I saw Donald excuse himself to the home office via the camera. My office at home? Our IT staff was prepared when he sat at my desk, most likely attempting to breach my company account once more. They'd established a phony doorway, letting him think he was succeeding. I told Rachel to let him in. Let him believe he is. Because their entire house of cards collapses in around 10 minutes after that board email is sent. Sarah raised her head from her computer. Are your emails ready? Shall I press the send button? I glanced at the security footage one final time. Robert, Donald, and Amber were still rejoicing over their fictitious triumph. Take action. The speed of the response exceeded my expectations. Robert's phone rang through the security stream just minutes after Sarah sent the email. As he listened to what I imagined was the board's initial response, we saw his face become pale. Are you referring to an urgent meeting? He called out into the telephone. What proof was sent by whom? Presumably checking his email, Donald reached for his own phone. He lost the color in his face. She knew the servers. Julia was aware of my attempt to gain access to them. It improves. As we watched the drama play out, I murmured to Sarah, await it. Amber's phone began exploding with alerts just in time. All of the board members had received anonymous private Facebook messages from her, the ones where she boasted that she had assisted Donald in stealing company data. The precise moment their joy descended into terror was captured on the surveillance camera. Robert yelled into his cell phone. Donald was hurriedly attempting to close his laptop, and Amber was in tears, mascara flowing down her cheeks. The coup de grace followed. Police vehicles driving up to the lake, home, lights blazing. It turns out that financial fraud and business espionage are significant offenses. Who could have known? As we watched via the cameras, I took Emma in my arms and hugged her close. Take a look at that newborn girl. That is the result of others undervaluing your mother. Before the broadcast stopped, the last thing I saw was Donald being released in handcuffs while continuing to yell that the home belonged to him. The aftermath was stunning. Robert and Donald were both dismissed within a day. The board's inquiry revealed years of fraudulent activities in addition to the conspiracy against my firm, which I was unaware of. Amber's promising influencer career was ruined by her involvement in corporate espionage. She had returned to Ohio to live with her parents, as far as I knew. Investigations were conducted and the offshore accounts were blocked. Donald was given back all of the money he had taken, plus interest. As it turns out, trying to steal corporate property is a wonderful way to forfeit any property rights. The deed was moved to my name, as it ought to have been from the beginning. Donald made an effort to apologize, sending long emails explaining how he had lost himself and how a younger lady in power had tempted him. I never answered. The divorce documents were unambiguous. He lost everything he attempted to pilfer, plus more. He would never again work in finance because of the proof of his corporate espionage. In my case, following the controversy, even more investors were drawn to my firm because of its moral business practices. We entered markets that were previously controlled by Donald's firm. Customers who had lost trust in established organizations were drawn to us because of our reputation for integrity. We now spend weekends at the lake house, creating new memories with Emma. I sometimes think about Donald's arrogant email with that picture while I'm sitting on the balcony watching her play. He believed he was declaring triumph, but in reality he was only recording the start of his demise. By the way, I saved that email. In my workplace, it is framed, a warning to never underestimate a lady who's established something worth defending.